Okay. So now we'll cover the things we discussed in the last session, the sixth session, which is kind of a smattering of different things. But the overall thing we want to try to get a more coherent idea of is how how we die and take rebirth, more in, especially in terms of like karma, how we create karma. You know that the dying from this life is essentially like, in one way, I mean, one way of looking at it, it's the karma to exist in this kind of rebirth we've taken now is exhausted, comes to an end. And and then so we uh, kind of go through the transformation of death, which is basically the karma to, and I mean, as part of that, the karma to take a rebirth begins to ripen, right? And then our mind, stream of consciousness, actually separated from the body of this life. And then we go into a bardo state. I mean, assume we're going to take rebirth as a human or animal or whatever. And then, and that bardo state is already shaped by the karma of our next life. And so during that bardo state, our stream of consciousness is basically, um, it's kind of being thrown by the force of our karma until around and different things appear and so forth, until the conditions for us to actually take rebirth in next life. So imagine we're going to have a human, then until there's a suitable like, set of parents that for us to be their child that we have the karmic connection with, and that they're what do you say, they're copulating, they're lying together. So and so the conditions of the sperm and egg coming together for us for conception to happen actually arise. So until that happens, we're just floating around in this bardo state. Um, um, and then, yeah, but when that does happen, then through the force of our karma, we go to that place, and then we enter into sperm and egg cell, and then through the force of an afflictive emotion, either attachment or anger, um, and then we actually take we actually then that next life we die from the bardo state and the next life begins. So that's kind of what we want to try to contemplate, imagine going on. But there's yeah, several different things we'll kind of look at step by step as part of forming that picture. So yeah, this is what we covered in the session 5. Yeah, the 5 factors, which we don't have to really think about too much. The 2 kinds of karma, and then 12 links of dependent arising. All right. Yeah. So why don't we'll start with this verse, but before we look at that, let's just begin by sitting quietly for a minute, focusing our mind, regenerating our motivation. Go focus your mind on an object of meditation for a couple minutes. Generate some mental focus. and then also generate a very positive motivation for the session. And then visualize oneself surrounded by all sentient beings. And we can read through the four immeasurable thoughts once. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to abide in equanimity, free from attachment to friends and anger towards enemies. May they abide in equanimity. I myself will cause them to abide in equanimity. Please grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they have happiness and its causes. I myself will cause them to have these. Please grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be if for all sentient beings, to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be free from suffering and its causes. I myself will cause them to be free from these. Please grant me blessings to be able to do this. How wonderful it would be for all sentient beings to never be separated from the happiness which is totally beyond suffering. May they be never separated from this. I myself will cause them to be never separated from this. Please grant me blessings to be able to do this. And then if you like, you can visualize field of refuge in the space in front and generate the mind of refuge. Fear of suffering of samsara or rebirth in the lower realms, and faith in the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or your chosen object of refuge to protect you from these. So Mahamanaya Swaha Hayayata Mani Mahamanaya Swaha. And then you can imagine Buddha comes into space above the crown of your head and abides there. So first, let's spend 5 minutes or so reflecting on these verses, these two verses from the Foundation of All Good Qualities, I think which you studied in the last module. So these two verses are about impermanence and death, and how it relates to karma as well. The importance of being careful, thinking about in light of thinking about our mortality, our death. Then the importance of being mindful of what kind of karma we create. So you can just read through the verse on your own and then contemplate the meaning for 5 minutes. And then let's reflect briefly on each of these 5 factors, as much as you can recall. Maybe just another few minutes on these. The causes of death, different things that cause death, the mind at the time of death, which is what we were just mainly looking at in the 8 absorptions, what kind of mind we want to have as we're dying. And then where heat gathers according to whether you take a fortunate or unfortunate rebirth. And then how we reach the intermediate state after dying, I think it says, after death. And then how we take rebirth. So just reflect and try to remember as much about each of those as you can for a few minutes. Now let's reflect on the two different kinds of karma we discussed earlier, throwing karma and completing karma. So throwing karma being the main one that it's a power, it has the power to throw us into a rebirth because it's complete with all four factors of the basis, intention, preparation, and the completion of the action. There. So that's the kind of the karma that mainly throws a rebirth, is a throwing karma, or causes us to take a certain kind of rebirth. And then the completing karmas are ones that don't have the power to throw a complete rebirth, but determine various conditions that a person experiences within the rebirth. Yeah, because they don't have the complete or the full basis, intention, preparation, and completion of an action are not all present when we create that kind of karma. So yeah, so just think about, just briefly spend a few minutes thinking about yeah, a throwing karma and a completing karma. You can think about maybe the ones that determine this life, your rebirth now, or the one that might determine, a throwing karma and different completing karmas, how they might throw a future rebirth after this one. Right, yeah, just think about those two for a few minutes. You can pause there, and we'll take a 3-minute break now. It's a short break, and then yeah, we'll resume.